Hi, fifth graders. I hope that you enjoyed your recap on the difference between fiction and nonfiction. And it's very important as we move forward to dive into more of both areas and the different genres. So that way we can be a very well-rounded reader. So if you haven't picked up an autobiography yet, now might be the time. Reading one on Epic or getting an autobiography hopefully soon when we're not remote here in the classroom, or maybe ordering a book, taking a chance at reading an informational book, maybe then switch back to fantasy and or realistic fiction. But the important thing is that you know the difference between fiction and nonfiction. We know that nonfiction is true information. We get lots of facts about true things. And we know that fiction is made up. Today, we're going to move on from that now that we have that mastered. And we are going to talk about when I read nonfiction, there's things I do before reading, during reading, and after reading. Today, we're going to focus on the before reading. Before I even dive into reading the words on the page of my nonfiction book, whether it's an autobiography, a biography, or an informational text, I need to predict what I might learn about, make an inference. I also want to indicate what I already know about the text. What might I already know about this topic? And I might want to ask questions about what I'm curious about learning that I don't already know. This is what we're going to focus on today. And I am going to be using some Native American nonfiction text to learn how we read nonfiction, but also to learn about Native Americans. On Thursday, we're going to learn about what we do during reading when we read nonfiction. And on Friday, we're going to do the same with what we do after reading nonfiction. We don't get to after this week. We'll make sure we get to it the following week. But we need to know how to read nonfiction really well. And that's super important. Some of you may not like nonfiction as much as fiction, but the reality is we have to read both. And so we need to know how to be good readers at reading fiction, which we've worked on for a while, reading Night of the Spadefoot Toads. And now we're going to switch gears to some nonfiction. So let's think about the before reading. What I like to do before I read an informational text is I like to fill out a KWL chart. And I like to fill out about the things I know and maybe some of the things I'm wondering, and then chart some of my new learning after, during, and after reading the text. So today, we're going to focus, though, more on what I might infer the text is about, ask questions, and jot down what I already know about the text. I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen. And I'm going to go ahead and show you how I like to organize my thoughts before I start reading a nonfiction text. I chose today an informational text. And the informational text that I chose is our section on Native Americans and their land. So this essentially is the title of the section that I'm going to read to you tomorrow. But if I use some of my text features, like the title, maybe some bold words, pictures, captions, I might be able to make some inferences about what I think I'm going to read. But it's also important for me to first think about, what do I already know about Native Americans and their land? So, okay, what I know. So I'm going to go ahead and start jotting down. Make sure you know what I'm doing, because you're going to have to fill out a chart like this as well this week. So number one, the first thing I know is that Native Americans lived in all different environments, habitats. Native Americans lived in many different habitats. I also know that Native Americans had to adapt. Native Americans had to adapt to their environments and or habitats. And what I know about adapting means they had to figure out how they were going to adapt to the different climates and the different types of natural resources that they would use to help them survive in their environment that they lived in. I know that there were many tribes. There are many different Native American tribes. I also know that Native Americans didn't get along with our European explorers. They had many different cultural differences, but they also did trade with the Pilgrims. I have lots of different knowledge about Native Americans because of the different books that I've read. I'm going to jot down Native Americans used natural resources and one more I can write down is Native Americans. Native Americans traded with the I have the Pilgrims. Okay. So one thing I like to do before I start reading my text, The Native Americans and Their Land, I like to first think as a reader, what do I already know about this topic? I could be here for a while writing down everything I know, but I at least want to start wrapping my head around some of that. So when I read, I can go, oh yeah, I know that. And then I can add on to the knowledge I already know. The next thing, though, that readers do is we think about what we might want to know about our topic. If the topic is about Native Americans or the solar system or a particular reptile, we would want to jot down our questions, not only before we read, but also during reading, because sometimes a text might not tell us the answers to our questions, and we can find our answers in another book or resource. So what are some things I wonder about Native Americans? So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I write down a couple of questions. I'm going to go ahead and write down, what are some of the tribal ceremonies? Okay. I'm wondering about their tribal ceremonies and or origin stories. So what are some of the tribal ceremonies and or origin stories for the different Native American tribes? And I'm going to end with a question. So what are some of the tribal ceremonies and or origin stories for the different Native American tribes? I might want to know, I think I want to know because I don't know all of this, where did what are all the different tribes and where did they settle? What are all of the different Native American tribes and where did they settle? Another question. So while I'm reading, I want to make knowledge of the things I know and clarify my knowledge, but I also want to try to find the answers to the questions about what I'm wondering. These are just a few examples. During learning and or reading and after reading, we can write down the things that we've learned, which for some of the different nonfiction books that we read might be a ton of information. And then sometimes we pick up a book where we knew quite a bit and we had a few questions, we found the answers, but our learning, we learned new things, but maybe not as much as we would on another topic of a nonfiction book. So today, you're going to be reading a nonfiction book at home. And you brought one home before our remote learning. If you've read that already, then you're going to use Epic. And you're going to write down what you know about that topic. This is going to be found on Class Kick, and you're going to type it. Then you're going to write down some things that you're wondering about this nonfiction book that you're reading. And then after you read today, you're going to write down maybe some of your new learning, and or we'll go back to this and you will go ahead and jot it down the following day. So what I just modeled here, you're going to do in a nonfiction text. Tomorrow, I am going to, and or today's Tuesday, so Thursday, because our Wednesday day, I am going to be reading some of this to you about Native Americans and their land. And we're going to jot down some of our new learning from the text together on our KWL charts. If you have questions during reading time, please make sure to pop in, and keep in mind, today you need to read a nonfiction text. We're practicing what it looks like to read, but also what do we do before reading? What can we think about before? Remember, you can also write down questions during. And today I do want you're going to finish reading some of this nonfiction book. And I want you to write down some of your learning as well. Tomorrow I will model more, or on Thursday, what my new learning is. But I think you can handle this part today on your Class Kick assignment. All right. Hop on if you need assistance, and if not, keep moving through your reading steps.